So let's look at this. And we are going to talk about machine learning. We are also going to talk about security or insecurity. I remember there was a newsletter which said insecurity. It was called this, so I borrowed that. You know, since I'm a trainer mostly, and I like writing code when I can, when I get to do this, then I am not inventing things. I'm usually explaining things. So usually borrowing some good things that I saw. That's what we're going to talk about. And here, let's start. So the reason we're going to talk about this is because machine learning is very popular today. I'm sure you know, and I'm not going to expand on that, machine learning and AI. What's interesting is that I believe it's that machine learning that pushed Python into this place where it is, right? Python was invented by this guy. His name is Guido von Rossum, right? And look, 30 years later after it was invented, when I was part of a startup where the guy said, oh, we're cool here and we do Python. So Python is no longer cool here, we do Python, but it's normal, you know, the big chase, they use Python a lot. And I remember those guys, they were also showing their music, which was very loud, but you could have loud music in the office. And they used those special new speakers that only appeared back then, a very small thing, but it would roar like a lion. So in any case, enough of that. And now Python is not just cool, Python is everywhere. It has passed Java, it's the second most popular language, and it's just a matter of just maybe any day that it will also pass C and will be the most popular language. So there are a few things that follow from here. Thing number one is everybody's using Python. Here is a little bit statistics on that. Statistics is that anybody uses Python. People out of college by default use Python. They used to use R. That was kind of their default. While sometimes data science still does R, but Python is kind of everywhere. You ask them to do any script, they will do Python. Okay, now Guido von Rossum has come up with a new idea that he will address the weak point, and that is doesn't run as fast as you would like. So if he's working on this, of course it will pass C and C++. And so people love Python. But the result of the fact that people love Python is also, by the way, that's probably Python and Anaconda here in this picture, another snake. But that's not anything to do with the snake. You know, the history of Python is because Guido von Rossum loved the Monty Python show. That personally had a bit of a problem for me because I didn't like the Monty Python show, so I couldn't really enjoy the language. Well, now it's everywhere in any case, right? So the end result of that is everybody is doing Python. Lots of non-programmers are doing Python, which leads to, and now we start talking about something that's more or less new. So people know about scripting. They know, that's a nice thing, easy to do. So give me that script, I'll double click on that, maybe it will run like that. In any case, if I go to the command line, and if I type Python and give it some Python script, it will run. I know that. I also probably know about Python notebooks, right? It's IPython notebooks, which today are called Jupyter. So Jupyter, don't have any good example to run, but you can compare Jupyter to Harry Potter movie. And everybody loves Harry Potter movie, and some people even read the book. So in Harry Potter movie, which was back, 20 years ago when it appeared, the newspapers were alive. You could see the newspaper. Today, of course, they're alive. Anyway, they are not on paper. Those newspapers were on paper, and nevertheless, they were alive. And you could see people smiling at you. You could see people waving at you. So Everybody likes that even more. I can send you my wonderful new notebook. It does miracles. You open it in the browser. Well, you open the environment in the browser, you load it in the browser, and boom, you run. Well, it turns out not only boom, you run, but boom, you're infected. So that's what we're coming to. That's fun. But before we do this, if you have half of the world programming in Python, there must be people who don't know programming there. And therefore, their projects won't be all that great. How do you address that? Well, that you address by teaching them good programming discipline. You're telling them, okay, you have this product or project, but you know what? When you leave this product for any reason, nobody will pick it up because it doesn't have a nice organization. But however, if you put it in this nice structure, and if you give it the tests so that it's something that people know how to test in the first place, you can address the very first one. So you can have better program organization. Number two, you might have bad performance. People don't even think about performance. They think about, wow, it works. Nothing for me to do. How nice, right? So they don't write good code. Now, for that, I actually have a course called Python High Performance, and there are ways to teach. That's not that bad. People realize that their projects may be not perfect. They know they're not programmers, they're researchers, maybe data scientists. So they know of that. What they don't know is security. Well, they heard about security, but what has Python to do with security? That's their thought. Normally, this is their thought. In other words, if we're talking about something I know that I don't know, and that's programming, and something that I know that I don't know, and that is performance, then comes something I don't even know I don't know. I don't know that Python could be vulnerable by itself. How could it be? I'm just sending you a Python notebook. It just opens in the browser. There's no way how it could be malicious. Well, it turns out now we come to some fun part. So somebody sent somebody else machine learning, which is all the hip, all the interesting things there. And wow, it also comes as a machine learning that you can save and send. Now, in more detail, and by the way, here I'll borrow from the guys who actually did that work. I'll show you that later, who did it. Okay, but you send it, and very often you send it in a special format. That format is called pickle, which is very natural. They like to have very fun names. So pickle format sounds very good, right? You can save your model. And not only that, today it's extremely popular to send your models around. And here's why. Well, that is because knowledge is shareable, right? We want to share our knowledge. We even want to share our models. We just don't want to share maybe our data, or maybe we don't want to share our code. So we package them. We tell them, here's something you can use. You don't have to know how I did it. You know, there's a joke about that nobody wants to see how sausages are made. So that kind of a joke. So you get a model. That is step number 3 here. You get a model, you open it, you feel good. Now, you feel even better because of the pre-trained models. Pre-trained models means that I can ask my model to go look all over the world, look at examples of good speech, grammatically correct English, and embody that knowledge in the model. Then I will give you that. I'll give you a model that has been trained for good English. All you will have to do is to ask for a specific task. Like those guys and girls that share food, so the task will be to eat that food. You need to know quite a lot to eat the food. So maybe my task will be to answer questions. And you do need to know a lot in order to read English. That comes with the pre-trained model. And then all you need to do is, here are 75,000 questions on SAT, and please learn to understand the question. That's the pre-trained model part. And then map it to the right answer. That's the last part that you have to do. Very attractive, very popular. You may have heard about BERT. BERT are those models that understand language. BERT is what came about through, let's say, Google's attempt, but now everybody's doing that. And this BERT comes pre-trained. So usually to train this English part of the language, you need 8 Google machines, 8 Google very powerful TensorFlow machines, TensorFlow processing unit, TPU machines, which cost like about $50 an hour. And if you need to run it for, that's what they trained BERT on. They ran it for 8 days, no, 4 days, I think. 4 days and 8 machines in parallel. So that's, I think I estimated that once at $50,000. So you get that amount of work in a pre-trained model. Extremely nice and extremely promising. And here come the dragons, right? And if somebody saves it as a pickle format. Now, there is a little bit of sensationality in what I'm talking, not because I put it in, even though maybe, but because of the guy who did it. They were very, very excited about this interesting vulnerability. And so they researched a little. I mean, they researched a lot, but when they found this pickle is not secure. Yes, all non-pickle data you trust. But I don't know if you have heard about such an experiment. Create a website and then put a button on that site and then put the text on this button, which will say, click here to be infected. Where I read it, it was saying 40% of people do click. Now, where I was talking about this to my students in the previous course, that was the previous 3 days, they guessed 80%, they guessed, I think, 50%. So the guess is also pretty wild. If you want to have more fun, you go to YouTube, which absolutely loves making fun of Americans. And there are people in the streets talking to a regular guys and girls saying, well, will you tell me your password? So most people don't, but instead they say, no, I won't. But I can tell you, it's my name plus my day of birth. Okay, so then they say, oh, well, by the way, what's your name? Well, I'm Joe. Okay. And by the way, what's your day of birth? He says, my day of birth is that. So is that your password? Some become embarrassed, some don't. In any case, what I'm saying is that even that kind of warning is nothing in the eyes of people. Many people won't care. They won't even know, right? You need to go to pickle description and find out that's what it is. So I think you would agree with me that that warning doesn't do the job. Anyway, in the security world today, the trend is to ask somebody to do your work, meaning not the user who probably will not read and not even know what to read, but it should be the organization. That's how it works. You remember that you go to some unsafe site, Google pops up and says, no, sorry, that's unsafe. I'm not sure if you use Microsoft browser, because Microsoft browser today is Google browser. Today it's using Chromium. And maybe it's doing this, maybe not. I just don't have enough experience using Microsoft browser. By the way, for fun part, I was listening to a Microsoft presentation. They use the word Googling. They don't use the word edging or searching. They also say Googling. In any case, the Google search portion of the world now, very quietly, is almost 100%. I think it's 96. So de facto standard. In any case, we're talking about the people who use Python probably don't know enough about security. People who use machine learning probably don't, and people who use to save it as a pickle probably also don't know. All right, so those guys who invented this breach, they go to PyTorch and they say, you know what, many of your models, it's kind of GitHub, it's PyTorch Hub, right? So anybody can come, grab their model, offer it for people, and can you tell me, are you, PyTorch, are you verifying the models? They say, yes, we verify the model, but we only verify it for what it does, how it works, We don't verify for security. That's not our business. So the researchers tell them, well, try that, try to at least give the people some warning and tell them, don't use Pickle. It's not secure. But these researchers that I'm talking about, they did exactly that. And they also did the responsible disclosure. Our interest is different. Our interest is that, look, that's a snake basket, right? We're opening quite an extensive breach. I think that's fun. The place where I heard it was my favorite security podcast, and that is Risky Biz. So we go on, and those guys, they do responsible disclosure where they explain their beef with PyTorch. What is interesting for us is not so much that, well, you can create that that on your own, and I'll show you in a minute how you can create everything on your own. It's just that they go the standard way of who will be affected. Well, PyTorch will be affected, and then let's talk to PyTorch. That's their way of going. By the way, PyTorch, if you're not familiar with this, then machine learning standard is TensorFlow, or was TensorFlow, because Google's strategy in the getting the biggest share of the cloud computing market was to invent such machine learning, make it popular, and then implement it in hardware, and then everybody comes to Google. And it didn't quite happen this way. The Googles may correct me, but they're still at 9% of the market. One of the reasons is because they did all of that, but then PyTorch became more popular. That's what people like to say about Google, that they're awesome, great, but not as good when dealing with humans, better dealing with computers. So PyTorch, who is very good dealing with people because it's out of Facebook. So PyTorch came and kind of became more popular. We can check it. Let's check what the situation is today. So let's do this. Let's say trends. Let's say, and both terms are very unique. So TensorFlow. Here, popular, right? Going a little bit maybe from 100% to 50, still popular. What about PyTorch? Not PyTorch, but PyTorch. Right here. Well, that is not heartwarming for Google, right? Because PyTorch is above. Let's look at how did it happen historically. Let's look at past 5 years, maybe. You see what happened, right? You see very extremely popular, that's TensorFlow. And then PyTorch begins at about late. They see the popularity, but it's not all that great for programmers, and then it goes up. And correspondingly, the TensorFlow goes down. And probably the sum total is still 100%. So this is PyTorch. The natural place to go and complain would be to PyTorch Hub. That's what they did. But what did they complain about? So they came up with a tool. And the tool is to take this machine learning model that comes to them as a pickle file and prove that it has vulnerabilities. And part of it, let's create a vulnerable pickle file. I'm sorry, some computer picks up and he keeps talking and he explains what is vulnerable. So and I'm also checking, are there any text messages, but you guys, you can all talk. If not, tell me, I'll make you you will be able to talk. I'm going back to the presentation mode. I hope that was a problem. Here, okay, so what they did was to create a decompiler. And they say that is a great way to take any pickled machine learning model and analyze it and to check what's in there. Now, in machine learning model, you have two things. You have the code and you have the data. And that's where the people may get confused. They think that is just the data. How can it be harmful? The answer is that, yes, it is a pickle model, but it comes with the code. So the code is what can be harmful. And in fact, you can insert any code right there in the model. And after that, that code will start working. So whatever you want to do, read the files, kill the process, that's doing. Now, Fickling is the tool that they created, available to anybody who wants it. Fickling is the complete name of the tool. So it's not an activity, it's the tool, Fickling. That Fickling comes with its own pickle, oh, sorry, not yet, pickle virtual machine. And you can read the potential malicious files and it will be safe. And that's very important. You can also create one, but that's later. Because that reminds me of some interesting things that I was teaching this week. And that's the WebGoat Labs. The WebGoat Labs are really a great find. If you want to learn about security, then many people will have to create those labs on how to do that security. So it turns out that OWASP, that's the organization that's helping people who want to protect and make things more secure, they created a huge amount of labs, and they're all called WebGoat. So it's a little kid that the wolf can eat. And correspondingly, that also has the web wolf, the big bad wolf, but Goat is enough because Goat is a lab with intentionally inserted vulnerabilities. So they talk about that it's a good thing to learn to hack, and for that you need something to hack. So that's the labs. Now, right away it comes with a couple of warnings that if you're running this on your own computer, then your own computer is vulnerable to every one of the attacks that are included. So please don't do it. Well, actually, they say not exactly like that. We have configured, they say, for that to respond only to local host. So if nobody is invading your local host, which they shouldn't be, then you're okay. Most people would still be nervous. It's kind of, I open, there is a rumor that COVID originated in Wuhan, right? And it just leaked out. So people would be nervous, and that rumor, other people are trying to disprove, and that's the latest news in the hacking world. So let's not go there, because however it is what it is. And now here it is the same thing, right? It might leak out, and people are nervous. So for that reason, they do it on the local host. Better yet, when I was teaching, I gave students a virtual machine, which was an Ubuntu virtual machine. And what you do is you don't run them on their site. It actually doesn't work. Instead, you run it through Docker. I gave them this separate virtual machine. They were still nervous. They said, if I close the laptop, will it somehow squeeze its way out? Well, I told them no. I think I was right. In any case, the warning number one is be careful. And so either run at local host or really run as some other virtual machine and run it there. And that is really the best practice for security researchers or hackers, is that, by the way, more for security researchers, because these guys are more careful about what's called OPSEC, operational security. Hackers themselves are not all that careful. That's a known fact. There. After money and not about protecting themselves. So there are interesting stories there. But the first one is you run it on a virtual machine. And the second one, well, please don't use it for your nefarious purposes either. So where for protection, number two is don't run. That's by the way, because if we're talking about this tool, then it's pretty much the same story about I'm nervous even running this tool. So you learn, you investigate, you find out it's safe. It is safe, and just as this running was safe, now what does the tool do? So first of all, you can write a very simple program. Here's a simple program, and you can investigate this. So it's doable. That's a living example where you can write a little program, put it into Pickle, and then read it from Pickle. Step number 2, you can do it trace step by step. If you're a security researcher, you really want to investigate, well, that's what you do. Well, and step number 3, well, let's ask this question. What if it is malicious? Well, if it is malicious, you'll see the malicious code. Well, let's put it in there, right? If we're investigating, let's do it. This tool allows me to add some code to the Pickle. In this case, it's a harmless code, print hello world. But if that works, like it does here, that means I have injected my code. Well, essentially, it's a game over, and that's what they call it, test Pickle Pwn 3D. And that's where we're leading to. So now if you're into practical fun, practical jokes, you can send your friends, but carefully selected friends, some malicious code. Or the sky's the limit. You investigate the capabilities. Now, what concerns these guys, they did the good job. They found the potential vulnerability, they disclosed it responsibly, and they then asked somebody to fix it. Those guys didn't fix it. So today there are enough vulnerabilities. Well, eventually I think everything will get known, and if it is really important, well, it will come to the public knowledge. Now, for us, and we're not exactly these people, for us, what's important is that that's an interesting fact. It depends upon who you are. If I'm a teacher, well, I'm interested in teaching. If you're a hacker, you're interested in doing. And if you're on the defense side, if you're the security engineer, then now you have a real interesting problem. How do I make sure that people don't run pickles that might be malicious? So it depends upon who you are. Now, what is the potential attack surface? Again, people who are doing this, they might be exaggerating. There was this story a few years ago where somebody found a bug in the Cisco router, and he ended his speech with the words world domination. Because if you control Cisco routers, then essentially you control the internet, and if you control the internet, that's world domination. So look at it this way, don't get scared. But the potential attack surface would include you inject your code, or you put Trojans that work a little later. They save themselves to the hard drive and they activate whenever they want. Or you can, that's a very funny story. You know, the AI guys fight against other AI guys. So the good AI guys against bad AI guys. And the bad ones, they can present a picture that looks okay to us, but looks like something terrible to the algorithm, if you know the algorithm. So that's weight poisoning attack. You're changing some things in the model, except that with that, they will do it much simpler. You don't have to investigate how it works. You just change the model so that it gives you the wrong answers. So that's a long example. Let's try to go through that. We're deserializing. We are decompressing our code. The code already is in Pickle. So what it does, it changes the environment, runs in the local environment, and it verifies where it is, what it's doing, and you can create a local attack. I mean, only in that country, only in that place, only if you're on a specific IP, for example. And it could be very subtle. If something comes to mind, that is the zero-day attack on Iran's reactor, nuclear reactor, where the software was able to burn the reactor. quietly, I mean, peacefully, without any blow up. So there are interesting terms that hackers know, but the end result, well, if you can input code into somebody else's model, well, that's it, game over, right? Now, they give you even the proof of concept. That shows you where that is. I'll tell you how to get there. And that shows the real code that was tested following the exactly the PyTorch guidelines. So what I was teaching, by the way, allows me to put it into a little bit broader perspective because, all right, I have this vulnerability. What do I do with it? If I'm a hacker, what do I do? If I'm a defender, what do I do? So that was a general outline, and I'm showing it just because I just finished. People liked it. They said, yeah, they're very interesting, nice information. So first of all, there is such a thing as threat modeling. Threat modeling is old enough. It's about 10 years old. And it's a way to systematically go through your system architecture and try to figure out where the attacks might come from. All the attacks are abbreviated into 6 letters, STRIDE, and each letter stands for something. For example, S stands for spoofing. You pretend that you are somebody else. So you can send an email, spoof that you're somebody else. You can, there are lots of spoofing. You can spoof the MAC address so that you're a different device and so on. So that's a long story, but it's well developed. And we talked about based on all those 6 attacks, which are, you know, quite general, even though today security went a long way, but those six attacks are still pretty much correct. So then we talk about what are the usual attacks in all kinds of languages. And then we talk a bit about Java security, what you can do. And then I show a nice thing. I'm saying, well, that's all pretty boring because there is this basic problem with the programming that you're rewarded for functionality. You're not rewarded for security at all. You might be scolded for insecurity, but you're not rewarded for security. Hackers are the other way around, right? They are rewarded with big bucks for finding vulnerabilities. So that psychological is not nice. What can we do? One of the things that you can do is to make it a game. Well, at least it's a bit more fun. But the game only goes so far because the money that the hackers get, that's real. And the points that the developers get, well, kind of game points, right? So what you can do is automate it as much as I can. Let's see if I have this. I do. Here's automatic scanner. Let's click there. So that's my lab that I was teaching. And eventually I'll close it, but right now it's open. So SonarQube. SonarQube is automatic scanner, which comes out of the box and already does quite a few nice things. I'll show them to you in a second. But then you can add your own. For example, you probably can easily add the use of Pickle, and it would be checking that. So it's easy to install. It took me 10 minutes. The manual is wonderful. And then you take your project and you put it into Sonar and it does the scan. And the end result is this. You see this picture, which says, like here, somewhere it says basically you pass. All right, thank you. But you have 6 security hotspots. You have 57 problems that code smells and so on. That's all out of the box for free. And every one of those blue things is really a link leading you to more. So we were right here. Let's go a little bit back. And then I was talking about that there is also a trend. First of all, try to leave it to the professionals. For example, automation for security scanning is much better life than you go pair programming through every line of code. And then there are modern security frameworks. One of them is Vault. Vault is from HashiCorp. And if you have not heard HashiCorp, it's also the maker of Terraform. And Terraform is across the cloud that allows you to manage construction of things on every cloud. So they are 3 times more popular than each individual cloud. Therefore, they're smart guys. And Vault is a good framework where you can store your secrets. So you don't have to do this on your own anymore, but you can use a framework. So that was the basic approach. Let's look at what is the threat, then look at how to show the coding, which to me is honestly, I think it was a bit dull. Students, I think, were a little sleepy, but it's very valuable information. It really teaches you what you need to do. I'm working on making that more fun. And then the security frameworks, definitely fun because you're dealing with modern thinking and how you do it. All right, so let's give the credits where credit is due. This is where the information is coming from. Now, I added a lot of additional stuff, but that's the fun blog post. And, you know, they use those pictures and funny jokes. Some people will consider it funny. Let's see if there are any more pictures. Yes, there is one more. Talking about how do we deal with it. All right. Back. So we talked about that this is the general approach. First of all, you do threat modeling to know where the problems are. Then you do those GOAT labs. And there is also a wonderful standard. Actually, it's one of the best practices to use standards for a change. And the standards talk about how do you write secure code in Java. Not any code is secure. And well, that's the basic framework. And then the specific example came from here. I think that's it. So now we can chat. That's the whole purpose of that. Whole purpose of the webinar. Any questions? I'll check that you can either talk or that you can speak. I mean, talk, chat, or speak, whatever. No, I don't see anything. Well, tell me, was it interesting or no? Did you get?
Yeah, it was definitely very. It was definitely very interesting.
That's
I mean,
nice.
I'm not currently working with pickle files, but I mean, it's sort of like I'm always interested in knowing, like, oh, okay, it might be a security hole. Let me learn about it.
Yes, I think that's one of the things. Now, it turns out that my headset wasn't working, but you heard me all right. Let me switch. Wonderful Mac doesn't care, really doesn't work anyway. Yes, there are security holes for some people. That by itself is very interesting. All right. Now, all of that will be available. The slides will be available. You'll get an email with the slides. You will be able to respond to that email, and you will be able to also ask any question. Cool. All right. So I wish you a very good day. Can you change the color of the links? Yes. But Raymond, you will get the complete full. I'll give you the link now. If you want this, that's the key link, I would say. And here it is, and I'll put it for you here on the chat. Right. Plus, all the links will be part of the slides that we will send out. Now, if I ask about you, who is a hacker? Okay, let's put it this way. Anybody a hacker? A security researcher? Okay, a peaceful developer?
That's my story. I'm a peaceful developer, and I'm sticking with that story.
Okay, okay, Saravana, you're a peaceful developer. Nice, developer, okay. Yes, well, it's an interesting life. Developers are now required to start thinking about what they were never were thinking about. And it is this year, I believe, that is really the change here, with all the ransomware and with all the organized hacking that's going on in the world. And many things that that the security researchers that do the podcast, that they were saying, well, the hackers should really do this, they really did it. Not necessarily because of the researchers said it, but just because the hackers had some time off, let's put it this way. They realized there's something interesting to be done, and they organized in a just wonderful project organization. So they learn from project management, they learn from code organizing. So far, they were not too careful about OPSEC. You could kind of catch them, but catching very many attackers is hard anyway. All right, guys, so my pleasure. It was very nice talking to you. And I wish you a very good weekend coming up.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you. Thank you. Be well. Mhm. Thank you guys for your reactions. Okay, I'll stop it. You have all of the information. Okay, interesting, interesting. You have all the information that you need to get in touch. Saying goodbye now. Be well.